Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure there might be a couple other people joining us, but we will just get started. I'm gonna send the public notice or the agenda now. And I have in the order of business to approve the meeting minutes, which I normally post on the website, but because we have the website as a draft right now for what we're working on, I couldn't post it. Yeah. I tried to put it as a file in the Google Calendar. I don't think it worked. Because I tried to click on it and it wasn't functioning. So it's okay if it's okay, I'll send it out again after this meeting so that you guys can review it. So you guys can review it and then we can approve it for the next meeting. We'll approve that the meeting, the one prior, and then this one in the next meeting. If that's okay with you guys. And that being said, we have a couple of things we're gonna go through today. There's the 6-month report. I don't know, and then the website report or like website review. I don't know, Joe, if you think we should do the website first, or the report first. I'm open to either.
Let's do the report first.
Okay, great. I don't know if did you guys get a chance to review the report ahead of time? No? Okay, I sent it in the large like commemoration commission email. So it's okay if you didn't. I will I'll pull it up. I have it here. Okay. Okay. So this is the 6-month report. It's a draft right now, obviously, because I wanted to get input from you guys. So it's a small, it doesn't have that many content. Okay. It doesn't have that much content, I should say. And I built this table of contents based on a conversation that I had with the new chief of the environment cabinet. He asked for, obviously a summary of what we've been up to, vision, successes, and challenges. So I'll just go through it. And you guys, if you want, can start leaving questions in the chat as we go. And then we can have a discussion about it after. So for the summary, I kept it really short. I talked about how the commission has 44 members, about how many are appointed, how many are ex officio. I talked about the meetings that we've had, and I talked about the April 30th meeting that didn't have a quorum, so we couldn't vote for a chair. So the commission itself doesn't currently have a chair. And for the subcommittees, I talked about how many members each of them have, how many of them are ex officio, and how many members attend regularly. So I talked about timeline, academic curricula. It has 15 members, 5 ex officio, about 9 attend regularly, and that you guys have the strongest attendance among the subcommittees. Okay, so for the vision, I had a mission statement, and the mission statement I took from the ordinance because I thought it was very strong. But if you guys want to change that, if you guys want it to be something that like we work on together, I'm open to that. So for the mission statement, I put that the commission exists to affirm that our diverse and intertwined community histories are of great value to the city of Boston, that historical tourism should be a driver of true shared prosperity, that inclusive and honest historical memory is a crucial public good worthy of attention and resources, and that communities all over the city should have the tools and resources to research, preserve, acknowledge, and celebrate their history. That's what I have as the mission statement. And so for goals, I went through how we talked, going through our meeting minutes and identifying the ideas that we've had. So you guys can look at what other subcommittees are doing. I'll go through them really quickly. So events, exhibits, and trails obviously wants a website. They want branding. They want like a marker or a plaque program. And that includes like digital markers, digital maps, and digital guides for tourists. They want obviously walking trails. They want parades, reenactment, festivals, fireworks, block parties. They want advertising. They want a series of programming from April 2025 to August 2026 at the Ritz, to at least to start. They want to engage smaller businesses and cultural institutions. They want to have official beverages, which is something we keep talking about. So they want to engage like local distilleries, and they want it to be like very like a fun environment. So they have a lot of cool ideas. So for you guys, maybe if I'm missing something, let me know. But I also put that you guys want a website because, of course, we want a database. There's the Boston Neighborhood Stories, maybe books, podcasts, video series, things that are like more tech based. I talked about we want to do data, resources, and archives collection and curation. And we want to make sure that those things have language access and other accessibility accommodations. And we want to uncover obfuscated histories through research, and then put those on museum curations, BPL exhibits, and through the BPS curriculum, and potentially internships for students. And then I also have digitizing archives. So that was what I put for you guys, but if there's things that I'm missing, let me know. And then they have a legislation and preservation tools has a lot. They have zoning reform, grading systems for buildings, historicity and demolition for predictability, which might be implemented after a citywide survey or before. They want to simplify landmark petition processes. They probably also want to digitize landmarks. I might have to add that. They want historic districts and legitimacy for cultural districts, like political legitimacy. Deconstruction ordinance for climate change. We want to collaborate with Preservation Trust Office, affordable housing, Office of Housing, things like that. And they also want economic studies about why historic preservation is good for the local economy, including jobs and affordability. They want to invest in other studies and preservation tools, and then I put separately the citywide historic and cultural research survey. So for successes, it's short, and that makes me sad. But I talk about you guys all getting sworn in, and having 2 chairs per subcommittee, and having consistent meetings, since we first started in February. There are also project management groups inside of the city that are trying to work to get, the things that we plan done. So they've come together and identified that as a success. And I've identified the fact that we have goals and ideas and projects we want to undertake as success. For external, I talk about myself because I'm essentially the only person doing external stuff. Community engagement events. I've been working with Charlestown 250. I think I talked about it with you guys. And there has been an increase in constituents talking to me about what they want to see and how they would like to see that commemorated. So that's great. Now, for the challenges, it's very long. But I will summarize. I'll say that as a commission, we're subject to open meeting law, and that's been a challenge to maneuver for a couple of reasons, because we have 44 commissioners for the larger commission, and that means a quorum is 23. And even if a subcommittee has 15 members, that's a quorum of 8. So attendance is always going to be a problem for the quorum. So one solution was that we exclude ex officio members from the quorum, which is something you can do under Robert's rules, to bring down that quorum of 23 to 16. But the challenge that comes out of this is that attendance is made up from a combination of ex officio members and non-ex officio members, appointees, and we still run the risk of not having a quorum. So I also talk about open meeting law communication, which is, we've struggled with this as a subcommittee a lot because we want to plan things, we want to work together, we want to work through like archives and stuff. But if things are not properly noticed, then we're at risk of violating open meeting law if there's a quorum. And it's difficult to then bring something forward back to a quorum because we're not allowed. So I said it's not really tenable to do it's not sustainable to do any long-term planning with this quorum issue. I also talk about the ordinance itself. because I think that the ordinance is pretty wonky. It hasn't been helpful in allowing us to know where we stand and what we're allowed to do. I also talk about the fact that, because it says to help relevant departments plan things. But I think that there are certain things that fall under the purview of me in the Department of the Historic Preservation, in the Department of Historic Preservation. And so there are things that we're like not sure if we have final approval, and I think that we should, and I think that we need to have a budget. Even if it's not like we have a really large budget, so we can do all of the things that the Commemoration Commission has planned. We do need a budget for, there are things that fall under the Office of Historic Preservation that the Commemoration Commission will recommend, and we should be able to execute what they recommend and know that what they recommend will be put into place. So another thing that I talked about was how each subcommittee is working on something completely different that all comes together under the lens of historic preservation, but because the Office of Historic Preservation has had a lot of changes, right? We've, the chief that hired me, she left, and then the executive director of landmarks left, and then recently the new director of historic preservation left. So we've been, I think, severely impacted by the fact that we've had such changes, so many changes, and I'm still the only person who's working full-time on the commission. When there could be, I think, potentially much more we could execute, even without funds, if there were more people who could take on the amount of tasks that could be accomplished. So yeah, that's what I talk about. So key questions that I've identified based on what you guys have asked in the meetings and what came about when I was writing that question, the challenge section. So the first one I think is a commission the best apparatus to engage in the work outlined by the ordinance? So this question has come up because open meeting law has significantly reduced the ability to make strides in planning due to quorum issues. And there are also internal project management teams who are working on commemoration events, which I would like to make sure that we're working with each other and not like all over the place, right? A solution given is to restructure the commission as an advisory committee to the internal team. So that would then aid in making consistent strides in planning, reduce the inability to discuss ideas outside of meetings, and allow for the internal team to be on the same page as the current commission. And so that has a lot of traction, and I'm working with the law department to see if that's something that we could do. The second one is if the current process isn't engaging departments that will ultimately carry out the recommendations made, how can we get the Commemoration Commission staff and staff of other departments to more meaningfully work together? So I talked about the specifically legislation and preservation tools subcommittee, but I will also add that there should probably be one for you guys. It's expressly different in its goals because its focus is more on preservation and policy, not necessarily commemoration. And so while there's an internal project management team, it doesn't include like planning or the BLC or zoning or other departments that would be responsible for regulations of preservation of buildings and buildings. And so a recommendation is to form a similar project management group taken from these departments for that subcommittee to be able to adequately recommend and advise on projects. And I say that I could probably add another one so that it's like project management team with archaeology, with archives. I don't know. I'm thinking of other departments that might be invested in specifically to archives and curricula. So that they also have the capacity to execute the projects that we want to do, which is also why I think there should be funding in OHP for you guys, because I think you guys most closely align to our department. So I'll just make a note to add that there. Another question is when will there be more staff to aid in the work of the commission? And the challenges I identified, the fact that the commission ordinance says that there will be the equivalent of 2 full-time staff members. And then they write 1 half-time staff and another half-time staff, which is the equivalent of 1. So it's bad math, but also I think that because it says the equivalent of 2, I'm hoping that they can give us the equivalent of 2. Fingers crossed. But so that has been a question that's been asked. I explained that with just one member working on all the growing aspects of the commission's needs, there's legitimate concern that any additional work, such as another project management group or two more project management groups, will increase the workload that in a way that might be unsustainable as plans progress further. So if the commission ordinance outlines that there will be multiple staff members, the commissioners would like to know when and how the city intends to fulfill that portion of the ordinance. And then the final question is, given that some recommendations made by the commission will fall uniquely under the Office of Historic Preservation's purview, which is what I've been speaking about, and that the Commemoration Commission currently lives there, shouldn't the Commemoration Commission team have a budget and more staff to adequately undertake the recommendations made by the commission? So the Events, Exhibits, and Trails Subcommittee has identified this is a potential solution. But they are, okay, so the events exhibits, I have to edit this. They want me to move to tourism, sports, and entertainment. Because it aligns with, I mean, the project management team is tourism, sports, and entertainment because they are working on the Commemoration Commission events. And so they think that what they do aligns and could be implemented more seamlessly by that department. But I say, but while the commissioners have that interest in moving that commission and moving the whole commission there, there's an understanding that not only will a move like that take time, the other subcommittees wouldn't necessarily agree that's an appropriate fit. So in the meantime, commissioners have identified that the Commemoration Commission as an existing city team within a department can and should have a budget to fund things that would fall under the purview of the Historic Preservation Department. And in addition, having those extra project management teams. And that's it. It's 9 pages, nothing crazy. So I will share this with you guys. Now so you can review it again. I did email it, but just so you guys have that. And yeah, so we can open the floor up to discussion. Yes, Jordana.
It's really helpful to know more about what the other subcommittees are up to, because, because as you said, we have not been able to have a full commission meeting. It's, like having somebody decide like that they want to be under tourism and sports.
Right.
It's kind of a very interesting and out of left field idea to think about this. So, and I also want to acknowledge, Hennessy, that this is a really, really hard thing for you to do, especially in light of all of the higher ups in your department just like disappearing. And trying to handle all of this is a monumental task. And I can imagine it being a little bit thankless, especially when there's nobody in the larger sort of city really spearheading and making sure that things are getting done in that realm. So like, for example, for our subcommittee, we were like, well, where's our BPS person who needs to help us make a curriculum, because this curriculum is it's on our name. And without somebody from the cabinet saying somebody from BPS needs to attend these meetings every single time, like, it's just that's just it's a really tough place to be. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And then also, having gotten a couple of emails from, or at least one from Brian Sweat saying, that Murray Miller had left. And then also what I didn't realize is that Brian Sweat is the replacement for Mariama.
Mm.
And I think that is, I mean, is that clear to everybody else in this Zoom room who isn't like knowledgeable about city stuff? Okay, so it might be helpful for us to be introduced to Brian as being like the new person, the new head honcho in charge of the whole committee. Because, I mean, if non-city people might have not noticed that, has changed, and then also how important that change of leadership might be for us. in terms of implementation. So so that's something I was thinking about. And then the other, and of course, losing Murray and having him gone leaves the commission a little bit rudderless. It's also, with Kenzie Bach gone, who was the one who spearheaded the whole legislation, like who's our city councilor who's really jazzed about this and who's, and is it Ruth Z because she's on the commission, but then she's a commission member versus, I guess, as a non-city employee, all of these things are a little bit confusing, I suppose.
Yeah.
Not that that's your issue to solve, Hennessy. It's just that, yeah, we don't know because it's not necessarily spelled out.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
okay. And then the other thing that I'm on the Archives Commission as well, and have been helping out with some research on the Reparations Commission. So I feel like I'm somehow have gotten myself into a position where commissions are something that I do in my spare time. And I'm just interested to see whether or not this is the open meeting law and the quorum is a universal problem across the city or across cities in general, or whether or not it's a just us problem. And whether or not like a refactoring of the commission based on attendance or non-attendance might be one of the solutions. So, so thinking about, well, if somebody hasn't shown up, and and a lot of the folks who were, the legislation told us somebody from this organization needs to be on it, somebody from this organization needs to be on it. And if those people aren't showing up, then would designees help, or even be, or does everybody have to be a, so just thinking about like, is it the makeup of the commission that is the challenge, or is it commissions in general that are challenging? So I just, that's all. I'm going to stop there.
No, I appreciate that. This is great. So I do agree, and I'm hoping that the new chief, that Brian, can make it to this meeting on Thursday. He might not be able to, and in that case, somebody else will come in his place. But I am hoping that he can make it, because I did say that the commissioners will have questions. I think this is confusing, especially because it's happening so fast. It's like, 2 seconds and somebody's gone. And I don't think that they have done a good enough job of communicating that to the public in general. I also, it's a great question. In terms of city council, I think there will definitely be more city councilors. I think there's more work to be done in reaching out to city council on my behalf, to see who's excited. I mean, I know that Council President Lejean is very like hands-on, even if she's not attending herself. Like, she has a designee who's coming and who's definitely, keeping track. So I think she has some engagement, and I think that there's always room for more counselors to get involved. So quorums, are they the problem for some committees, some commissions? Yes, I think, like, for example, 4 Point Channel, which is a landmark district commission, they haven't been able to meet because they don't have a quorum. And so, I think I'm unsure about other quorums, other commissions. I know that the historic preservation commissions have been having issues with quorums because, they just have vacancies, for example. That's not what our problem is. Our problem is that we are so big, that it's just really hard to coordinate the amount of people necessary for a quorum. And so the idea behind it not being a commission and being a special advisory committee is that the same amount of people whose expertise the people who created the ordinance thought were necessary could still be part of it. And we could still meet even if we don't have, everybody in attendance, or majority of people in attendance, and that we could continue conversations on projects outside of meetings without it having to be publicly noticed all the time. So, we've talked about like populating populating archives, populating like website things that, you know, you guys might want to talk about, that we might want to talk about in an email outside of a meeting. If we were not subject to open meeting law, then we don't have to worry about serial communication among a quorum. So we would be able to just email each other. So I think the quorum thing is like a twofold thing. It's not just attendance, but it's also like what we're allowed to do and work on, and how we're allowed to work on those things and where. So, but that's my view on it. It might not be, you know, there might be other workarounds, but I just have found that we're running into multiple issues with it. And yeah, so the ex officio members do have designees. And if they don't, I beg them desperately just to send them to me. And yet that doesn't always guarantee that their designees will be on top of it, because it does kind of, I feel like it requires the ex officio members to be excited about this stuff enough that they will make sure that their designee attends, or that the designee themselves or their alternate is excited about this, or is able to. You know, we're asking a lot of very busy people to sit down once a month for an hour and a half or 2 hours, to talk about things. And, you know, it does feel kind of rudderless. It does feel a little bit sometimes fruitless, because we haven't been able to take shape. So that's what I think. But I don't know, I hope that was helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Sorry, I forgot, didn't send it to everybody. So,
So what is the next step? Assuming we get this, we approve this document, this draft, and it goes, who does it go to? What is their, do they approve it? Do they say do more? I
Right.
mean, like you're done. I'm new to how the city operates.
no, that's a great question. So, the ordinance just says that we're gonna file a report with updates to the city clerk. What I'm doing this for is so that that'll be done and that'll be good and fine. But since the new chief has arrived, he's asked for essentially I essentially use those, like those contents, like the summary, the vision, the whatever, the key questions, based on questions that he had asked because he wanted to know more about the commission. So I kind of framed it knowing that it'll be publicly available, and also it was going to inform the new chief, the chair of the Landmarks Commission, because he also asked for a report. It was going to inform the project management team I'm working with because they also want a report. And it would essentially, anybody who we think need to know, it would also go to them. So it's a very large audience in that it's like, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how we're struggling. Here's how we need you to step in. So this report, unfortunately, is not alone. Like I have to write more. So I'm on top of this report, I'm also sending these internal members like a summary, because nobody wants to read my meeting minutes, I guess. So I'm compiling those minutes and creating a summary of all of those minutes to send to those internal teams that are asking for not just where are you guys, but also what have you been doing, which is a lot. But so that, you know, because they're really trying to get in a better coordination with us. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And then the next step is, so the chief is on board with making it an advisory committee so that we're not subject to those quorum issues, and it wouldn't necessarily change how we function. It would just change what we're not allowed to do. And so my next step there would be to reach out to any and everyone who would have a vested interest and would need to help me with that change. So I'm going to be reaching out to intergovernmental relations to get their templates for like letters and things that they use. And I will be writing a letter explaining why we want to change it from a commission to an advisory committee. And I probably send that alongside the report. And, obviously we need to talk to somebody in city council. So it'd be good, for me to check in with the city council president's team to hopefully see if she bites. And also make sure that the mayor is aware of this change that we want to make. And then that letter would be in tandem with what the law department would write, which is something to repeal the commission to replace it, essentially with the same thing, but with the advisory committee. And then that would go to vote. And then the change would happen. And that's, I think, gonna take a little while. Yeah, so that would be next steps. I think that means we continue to function as we have been and maneuvering as best we can until we are able to get something else.
Providing we have a quorum on Thursday, is the plan to talk about this, about the switch? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, so I would probably be addressing it under our 6-month report talk, and I am right after this right after this meeting, going to hunt down a couple more people to make sure we have a quorum because, yeah. Yeah.
How is that looking right now?
We've got 20 people, so we just need 3 more, or 2, yeah, 3 more. So not too bad. And I have my Carolyn, you have not yet RSVP.
I haven't? I thought I had.
No, I think the doodle got deleted, so
Oh.
I
So
assume.
yeah, no, it's on my calendar. Count me in.
Amazing.
You don't have to track me down.
And
It's
know
it's on Thursday afternoon, right?
and I know that
Yeah.
David is here from the BPL, and I just don't know if he will be attending or Beth, so I have to reach out. And
Sorry about that. But yes.
no worries, it was totally me. Like I deleted the doodle and I didn't, and so I made another one, but that was not on you to check. So that's fine. And then I'm
And
gonna
David just said in the chat that he's gonna be there.
amazing. See, look at us. Phenomenal. And then I just have to reach out to Amanda Zettel, who's on legislation and preservation tools. Oh, good for her. To make sure that she's there. She hasn't RSVP'd, but she needs to be there because she's one of the people who volunteered to be a commission chair. So definitely her. And then once that's confirmed, then we have a quorum, which is great. Yeah, so that's where we are now. If you guys have any other questions, obviously like put in the chat, email me, ask now, it's okay. And if not, then, we can move to the second part of the agenda, which is the website review. So if,
Do you want me to lead that, or do you want to lead that?
you can lead it if you want, and then I can provide support.
I'm happy to do that. I just need 2 pieces of information from you, which is the HTML after the / after gov for the timeline and the events page. So I've got
Oh,
everything
okay.
pulled
Yeah,
out.
do that. We don't have the timelines in the invest page.
We
on
do.
the-
I just don't have it. I don't have the direct link to it, so I wanted to. Oh, I do. Hold on. Sorry.
I don't think we have timelines.
Do you remember what the page was called?
It was called timelines.
Okay.
I'll find it. It's in the draft form on the Access Boston thing. So I'll sign in and find the guide and send it to you. Sorry, guys.
Oh, it's upcoming anniversaries. That's what it is. Okay. I
Yeah,
forgot it was in
okay.
that page. All right. Sorry. Give me one more second. I'm going to pull these all up. Sorry for taking a couple seconds to do this. So, we have set up a draft structure for the web components of our work and the events and trails folks. And it's very much a blank essentially, because we want to make sure that I don't know about you all, but I cannot type and talk at the same time. We want to make sure that we don't go too far down the rabbit hole before we've gotten everybody to agree on the overall look. And so do I have everything up?
I do, if you want me to share my screen.
No, I'm actively doing stuff and it's trying to log me out, and that's very unhelpful. Okay, I've got this now. Okay, so and Hennessy, please step up or step in anytime there's something I miss. Oh my goodness, yes, I do need more time. What is going on? Okay. So this is currently can everyone see my screen? Does it say Commemoration Commission? Okay. This is currently the main commemoration page as it currently looks. And working within the Drupal structure of the city of Boston, Hennessy and I have come up with the solution of this kind of, it's called a grid of guides. Obviously, it wouldn't say starting a business, winter, summer, and trash and recycling, but because these pages aren't live, we can't actually show them. But the four things that we really want to present to the public and kind of compile from all of our work is the timeline that we were putting together, the events, trails, and the research archives, however you want to name it. That's one of the things we should probably talk about. What that means is that if you go to the commemoration page, you will have a link to, on the far left, the timeline of events. So really like the big anniversaries that are coming up. And when you hover over it, first of all, it will say timeline of events. And when you hover over it, there'll be a better image, followed by events, followed by trails, followed by archives, research, whatever it ends up becoming. And then there's additional kind of government-y things below that. But this will be kind of right at the top of the page that we'll all be able to look at. Then when you click on those, there'll be standalone pages that are all reference each other. Caroline, should I stop now for the question?
Oh yeah, just quickly, what would be the difference between timeline of events and events?
So timeline of events is going to be more like a list of dates that are coming up. So for instance, June 17th, 2025 is the 250th of the Battle of Bunker Hill. Whereas events would be a march from, this part of the town to this part of the town to commemorate that event. So it's more like here's the dates that we're looking at, and the events and this is the stuff that's happening around those dates. Does that make sense?
Kinda. So one is just like upcoming events, and the other ones are events related to a place.
It may make more sense when we do the actual page. So let's
Okay.
talk
Oh,
about
okay,
it.
good.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so this will be the first one. So this is the upcoming anniversaries, events is a bad word to use because the other one's called events. So all this is subject to change. One of the main things that we wanted to kind of talk about today was overall format, overall style, and is this effective for what we would like to do, or do we want to come up with an alternative solution? This is a boston.gov structure. Is this okay, essentially? So right now it's organized by year. We just have lorem ipsums for now. But these would be the dates that we have acknowledged as being significant to Boston, and that we may be either compiling events around, supporting events around, or celebrating generally.
I put some dates in 2025 to maybe see like what that would look like, and also if we would want to do by like I put it 400, 250, but we're subject to like difference. But I wanted to identify which anniversary is upcoming, so it'd be like on this one is coming 2025 and it's a 400, but obviously we can change that up.
So this is meant to be like a much shorter content, kind of a Cliff's Notes of everything, of what dates we all want to be aware of, thinking about events and compiling. And then we went all the way up to 2033 to include Clock Walker and some of the events around the wrap up of the revolution. So that would be the first of those kind of grids on the first on the main page. The second is more of our colleagues in the events and trails group. So it's more of a clearinghouse, kind of a vetted clearinghouse. We don't have a lot of stuff in that either, but it would be organized by year. 2025, Malcolm X 100th birthday, Battle of Bunker Hill, things like that. But these would be specifically events that have occurred. And we would be sharing about those, or not events that have occurred, events that are happening that we are including on the web page as a clearinghouse.
Yeah, so that might be like for 2025, it might be like the Bunker Hill like reenactments or like parades, things like that.
Yep. Now, obviously, these would cluster quite a bit around specific dates. Similarly, trails, which is our other subcommittee that most of us are not part of. This would be another clearinghouse of trails. We put in the Women's Heritage Trail because it was ready to go. So in the trail information, you'd be able to click on each of the trails that would bring you to the external website on those trails. And then each one gets a thumbnail, the description, the link, and this would be similar in appearance to what the events page could look like as well. And then lastly, and this is the one that I think that we started the discussion on last meeting and hoping to kind of pick it up where we left off. But that we obviously want to hear about the anniversaries page as well from you all, and just the general vibe of this whole thing. We have started the page for where we would put together the archives information. What that exactly looks like, we'd need to discuss. But we wanted to do it in a couple of different formats to see what you all thought would be the best, or if any of them are good enough. So within the structure of this Boston.gov Drupal options, one option that we have is what's called drawers, where essentially we could organize the information either by an archive, a neighborhood, a theme, a topic, a community group. Sky's the limit for the amount of drawers we have. And then when you open those drawers, you can get to individual links that go to external links. For this case, this is the Chinatown history directory that we talked about last time. That's at Northeastern. All right, is that right, Jordan? I think so. Yes. Okay. I don't want to get that wrong. Sorry, someone's texting me alarm bells. I just want to make sure that my lab is not on fire. Oh, no, just interesting. And then somebody found an outhouse in a deed, just in case anyone's really curious what was happening. The next version of this is all considering the same contents, just presented in different formats. This is a iframe that is presented within the website itself, and in this case, linking to a Google Doc that could present organized information about the archives, similar to the oh, help me, what's the name of that thing again? The database system that we talked about. I know it's coming up next. Anyway, we'll get to that. This could also be
Airtable.
thank you.
Airtable.
Yeah. The difference between this and an Airtable table is the ability for this to be a Google document as opposed to an Airtable document, which has a lot of similarities from function, but different ways of accessing. So this is the existing spreadsheet that we had put together a while ago with some of the columns hidden. We would redo this obviously if we use this for a little bit more information. And then lastly is the Airtable version. We used an existing Airtable that was with the, I forget which office this is from, but
Economic opportunity, I think.
okay. So ignore the content and focus more on the Airtable vibe, where it's basically the same type of data being presented through an iframe Airtable that we would host off on Airtable and then bring in via iframe. And then links out to other departments. So There's kind of three big questions that we're hoping to talk about. We can kind of move around as y'all want. On the main commemoration page is the kind of four big clickable boxes for these four different topics. Okay. That's question one. Question two is, are we happy with the timeline web page in that kind of streamlined way of just having a list of dates in order by year? Which is what we would be compiling as our timeline, which obviously there'd be a much bigger version of that if we go with the big timeline page, but for now it would be just kind of a streamlined version. And then lastly, for our archives data, is there a preference for the way it's presented of the three? And is there a fourth, fifth, or sixth option that we should also consider? We may even do some live editing of the page if there's stuff that we can use to do that with. And to be honest, Hennessy and I are so unfamiliar with Airtable, we're not even sure if this is what Airtable normally looks like. So there may be another version of Airtable that you all could tell us about that may make more sense for the way this is being presented. And I'll pause there unless Hennessy, you have anything to add up front.
Good.
Okay. Kayla.
This is great so far. It's like great job on putting it all together for us to visualize it because that definitely helps. But two things came to mind. I know this is the timelines, archives, and curriculum subcommittee. I'm just kind of worried or like if people are Googling this, are they gonna come to this page or are they gonna end up at the City of Boston Archives page? Which is also, we also have our own page on the city's website, so I don't know if there's a way in like the SEO settings to make that distinction better, or I'm not really sure what that would look like since archives is in the name of the committee. And then just to throw my 2 cents in for Airtable, that is usually what it looks like. I personally prefer a database like Airtable. It doesn't have to be Airtable, but databases are better for like displaying data and creating relationships and showing relationships between things. Whereas like a Google Sheet or Excel is better for like tabulating and budgeting, and Airtable is much, I love it for project management kind of stuff like this. So I think these, like if you clicked on those consumer affairs and licensing it or printing services, it would like go to everything that had that tag on it. Where you can do that in Excel, it just doesn't look as pretty, and I think it's harder to use sometimes, but those are my 2 cents about the website. And again, great job with the first draft of it.
Joe, can you actually click on printing services and see what happens?
That's what happens.
Hmm.
So not a lot. Is something else supposed to be happening?
It might, it's already filtered. If you scroll up or scroll down a little, see how it says grouped by one field? So it's already filtered by that department.
Got it. So I can delete the filter essentially, and then clicking might make it filtered more.
It changes the way that it looks on your screen. This is organized by, I think, Treasury or procurement. So you might not have like full access to change
Sure.
the filtering.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I think that this was one of our questions was, does Airtable normally look like a spreadsheet, or is it more like a access database where you get to kind of like a home screen? Are we seeing behind the scenes, or is this front of house?
There's tons of different ways that you can make it look depending on how you need it or how it will work best for your use.
Okay. Okay, that's great to know. The other thing I wanted to mention was with the word archives, when Hennessy and I were talking about this, we realized that archives is helpful, but it may not be the right word to be using. And we were thinking something along the lines, like the ultimate goal of this is to connect researchers to sources. And so maybe it would be research or something that isn't overly used by, for instance, the entire archives division of the city of Boston. And we didn't have a good solution to that. So if there's alternative names for what that could be called, we're all ears.
Elections? I mean,
Collections.
yeah, I like research too, but
I think we also need to kind of figure out who our user is for that tab. Is it everyday Bostonians? Is it people who are a few degrees down the road of research already, and we're just trying to help them connect faster to resources? Yeah, that's kind of one of the questions. I think there was another hand up too.
Yeah,
It's
good.
mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe, thank you so much for this. This is really neat. I echo the sentiment that it really helps to visualize all of this. Just to go back to your first two prompts, I'm fine with the first tab, the four tabs there at the very top. I mean, you have to work with what you've got, which is within the city website framework. I think that's fine, just as long as it's clear what people are clicking on. On the upcoming anniversaries page, I do like the timelines that are laid out here, but I'm thinking about the users who are coming to this, and I'm wondering if it is too much to just perhaps add a single sentence for each of these, perhaps explaining why it is significant, perhaps for people who are new to American history, or for Boston history, or even why is this important? Like, what box does that check? And it doesn't, again, just a single sentence would help. Maybe there's a link somewhere to a, or they could look it up themselves, obviously, but of course we want to be as helpful as possible. But I'm just thinking about the user's end on this. And who is Paul Revere? What is this ride? Why is
Great
this
point.
important? Right?
Yep, that's an excellent point. It can definitely be an annotated list of dates for sure.
Right. Um,
It should.
and as for the third page there, I guess I want to, I think that Airtable looks nicer. I guess I want to see it in full form as to what it can do and what it can add for us that a Google spreadsheet cannot. And I don't like the look of the Google spreadsheet. So,
Nobody does.
but thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Dory?
Thank you. A couple of thoughts. I truthfully am kind of agnostic between, when it comes to Airtable versus Google Sheets. I think, I think Google Sheets has the benefit of being more familiar to a lot of people. So, I think Airtable may, for some folks, present barriers unless we're very, very thoughtful about how we present it. I also wanted to flag Jordana's question in the chat, which is, can you put an iframe for timeline.js, which I added a couple of links. It's a free open source tool, timeline tool that is actually powered by Google Sheets, created by the Night Lab at Northwestern University. And it's very easy to create an interactive timeline. I included a link as well to an example from one of our Boston Research Center projects, so that you can see what that looks like. And that allows you to, as you can see if you follow the link, not just create a simple timeline, but also add context, images, videos, and so on. So I just wanted to flag that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just to finish that response, there we go. I'm going to try to see if this works. Gonna hit refresh. Well, we'll give that a second to load because that can be really.
I'm not sure
Well-
that link will actually work because the link is actually, the link to the Harriet Tubman House is actually a website versus what gets embedded via the Night Lab product. So
We're gonna
yeah,
steal
so
first.
essentially the timeline itself would look like this, but inside the iframe.
Sure. Where do I find the Anybody know how to find the code on a Safari browser?
If you give me a couple minutes, I may be able to pull up. Here, this is an example created by the good folks at the Night Lab. One sec. Sorry.
So it's a
Doesn't
Google
need-
It's a
Sheet?
Google Sheet. It's really interesting. So this is an example generated by the folks at Night Lab. So if you plug that in,
All right, let's give that a shot. Hmm. So it's giving me an access error.
that's weird.
Hmm.
Um,
Wait, am I in the right one? Yeah, this is it. Okay. And yeah, to answer Kayla's question in the chat, we did have the Chinatown one, and I don't remember why we didn't use it as a link. I think we were trying to test to see if the city ones worked.
It wouldn't know, the Chinatown one wouldn't show
That's
up.
right, yeah. Yeah, when we put it in as a link similar to this, it just didn't show up. So we were thinking that there was something you had to do to the page to kind of export it as an iframe that we weren't able to do. So we found anything that had an Airtable in the Boston.gov page to use. Well, we can continue to work on the timeline thing and experiment a little bit, but what I wanted to ask as a follow-up to if folks like Airtable, great. We can definitely work with that. Where does it go? Here it is. One of the things that I'm worried about is too much information in the kind of research page, just because one, we're not going to have complete information for a lot of the archival resources that are out there. Like the folks that are represented in this meeting will be able to probably produce quite a bit, but it would be a lot of work to then proactively go out to the other groups and kind of create the Airtable document. The other challenges that we're thinking about is for folks like the city archives, which has its own kind of standalone research kind of search thing, and many of the other groups do too. Would the solution be essentially a bunch of iframes that are hyperlinked to other archives' search things? And then the Airtable at the beginning helps people connect to that institution via themes, topics, neighborhoods, community groups. So if I wanted to do something on Roxbury, then I could use the Airtable to look at the Roxbury neighborhood and know that I need to go to Northeastern. But then rather than put down everything that Northeastern has in their archives, it would really just then, if you clicked on Northeastern, bring you to either external link to Northeastern search page or an internal iframe that includes Northeastern. So it's a little bit more of a one-stop shop for all the different institutional searches. In that case, what we're really putting together in the Airtable is archivist knowledge on what big topics institutions kind of own or control or have big collections to, and not necessarily documenting and organizing every tiny collection that exists out there. Does that feel right amongst the group here as to like, is that a good way to approach this? It seems a little bit more manageable than trying to get everybody's individual sub collections organized, but I don't know if that's too top level or the right amount.
I guess I'll go ahead, but that's kind of how I envisioned it, is that if anybody else in the library and archives community, you have subject headings. So the Airtable would have a bunch of subject headings that related to Boston anniversaries, and us being the archival experts would put in places that we know that have resources related to those topics. And it's something that already kind of exists. If anybody's familiar with Archive Grid, you can do something very similar. Also Digital Commonwealth, which is more for digital stuff, but it encompasses all of Massachusetts resources. So I thought when we were first talking about this, that's kind of what I had thought we were doing just for Boston.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
I think it sounds good. So if we went down that avenue, would the next step be curating a list of topics? And then once we have the curated list of topics, then populating it with sources, theoretically?
It's like it could work that way.
Okay. Hennessy and I were looking at, I'll get to you in 1 second, Carolyn. I didn't want to skip over yet. Hennessy and I were looking at the list of, I think it was topics on boston.gov on the archives page.
Mhm.
And it's extensive. We can kind of start to narrow it down. Do you know if we were to start with the city's archive page, because I feel like it's a pretty expansive view of the city and its history, would there be any glaring missing components that would just eliminate entire archival institutions out there that we would want to make sure we do archives and to be able to ensure that we're capturing a good list of topics that we can then, because what I would like to do is prepare a list of topics, share it with everybody, and we either winnow it or expand. And then once we have an agreed upon list of topics, then we would populate with the archival resource from there. Yeah.
Yeah, so the topics that we have in our catalog are only related to collections that we have.
Right.
So we're definitely going to be missing a lot of stuff because number one, we don't have like the colonial records. Those are still at the Boston Public Library. So that's a big chunk of Boston history that we don't have here. So we wouldn't have a lot of subject headings. I had sent Hennessy a list earlier of CSV of all of the subject headings that we have in our catalog. So that can be shared with everybody if that's helpful, because it's in one spot instead of going through our whole catalog. But all of our subject headings, we try to get them from the Library of Congress. So, and then if there are local headings that we want to create, we create those based on cataloging rules. So to answer your question, the short answer is yes, we're definitely going to be missing a lot. But I think that if we kind of like do web crawls of other archival institutions, or if we come up with our own subject headings that we know of being the experts in this anniversary topic, then we could do subject searching and populate this Airtable ourselves.
Okay.
Or whatever if we decide to use sheets.
I think I have too many questions right now. Okay. First of all, Carolyn, I wanted to come back to you, and I didn't want to not address the question that you had.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, no. So I just recall that we've had a lot of conversations about gathering up resources by neighborhood.
Yep.
And I think we've talked a lot less about topic.
Right.
And so I don't know. I see that really, I don't know, really differently for the reasons that you're all saying, because we have all these institutions and all this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even really know what to say about that. We're really haven't, I don't think we've discussed that. But from a user's point of view, beyond neighborhoods, there could be some topics that we may want to be able to support exploration of. And that's a whole different kettle of fish.
When back in the day, when we were putting
Yeah,
together the list of
yeah,
archives, we started this kind of
yeah,
very preliminary list of neighborhoods, ethnic communities, and intersectional communities, which is just a list of ways to make mistakes. But
yeah,
because
of
I
course,
think I
of
get like
course.
55 words that are just
Mhm.
but this is based on, I forget what page it was, but I basically took it straight off of another page of archival documents. And um I don't believe that this is enough topics, obviously.
Yeah,
However, if we built from here, um, would that be a start? I don't want to
yeah,
make everybody come to up with like
yeah.
an
I don't know. That's
topic.
just a lot of, I mean, it's just a lot of, I agree with you. It's just a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, to have to generate. I mean, there must already be colonial, revolutionary war directories, LibGuides inside all of our institutions, or some of them anyway.
But that's would be what we would link to. We would not be creating that over again. It would really be like if you
Yeah.
want to do research on colonial Boston, here's 5 links that you should be going to.
Mhm.
And that way we're really just not even a clearinghouse, but really like the bus terminal for researchers.
Yeah, I mean, I think for that makes sense, but I still, I think, remain relatively interested in the idea of working on the neighborhoods, because it's something I feel like we could all work effectively together on. But that would be a different approach for the neighborhoods vis-a-vis the topics you're suggesting. So I'm not sure what to say.
I mean, I feel like the for me as a non-archivist, I feel like neighborhoods and topics are actually kind of, I think neighborhoods are topics. So I feel like I'm not experiencing them as 2 different things, but I'm not thinking about it the way you all have been organizing your data. So um, I didn't, I didn't, I didn't anticipate there being different challenges between those two. So that's good to know. Jordana?
Kayla was first.
Oh, sorry. You're muted.
Sorry, I didn't want to monopolize, but I kind of saw this as like a multi-lane highway. If you use a database, then you can filter by neighborhoods and you could filter by indigenous history. And then you could even filter it even more by another subtopic, which I think is what Airtable or something like it. I'm not like a
No, no,
salesperson for
no.
Airtable,
What we
but something
defined
like a database. It's a lot easier to do these very filtered. Like you could say Northeastern is good for this about Dorchester, about Indigenous history, or as an example. You can do that in a spreadsheet with filters, but it's just not as easy. But I kind of like envisioned it. I don't know if we want to put it kind of work backwards, like here's Northeastern and this is what they have, and here's the city archives and this is what they have, and then put tags in different columns. That way people can filter it as, what they're looking for. But again, this does exist in other places, so I don't know how much we want to reinvent the wheel. We might want to just kind of try to hone down on what this directory is meant for. Is it just for the timeline, focusing on those events, or is it meant to encompass all of Boston history, which is very, very hard to do. But that's just my thoughts, that with a database, people don't have to be so inclusive, don't have to be so specific. They can filter as they see fit.
Yeah, and if I may jump in really quick before you go, Jordana. I think the way that we were envisioning it is similar, but we thought that instead of it being the institution first, we would do like the tag. So if you're like trying to do Indigenous history, you filter that, and we take you to UMass Boston, because we figured people would be researching a subject and wouldn't know and would want to know where to go, and instead of researching or instead of going to a place and then figuring out whether they have it or not. Um, and I think that that's also part of why I asked for the tags, because I figured all 574 of them we could put together. There's definitely some that's like immigration records, immigrant, whatever, and then we can combine that into one thing. And then once we've combined, we can respread out as we think we need to, you know? And that was my thought process behind it, but Giordano.
Um, as Kayla was saying, we all sort of organize and describe our material in the same way. You know, we have catalog records that come from the catalog, you know, like regular library records, as if you were looking for a book, except for modified to include organizational records. And then, of course, there's the institutional, you know, Northeastern University Archives and Special Collections. And then each of our special collections get a guide. And those are, we call them in the biz, we call them finding aids. And most of us create finding aids, not all of us do, but most of us do. And we submit, most of us submit all of these things to an international resource called Archives Grid. Just put a little context around things. As Kayla said, just in case everybody wasn't coming from using our jargon. But not everybody uses Archives Grid, right? So that's going to have some subsets. And then, of course, some of us digitize individual documents from our collections, and some smaller subset include those in digital commonwealth. And then some of us do sort of humanities style projects that contextualize either digitized items or collections. So I think Kayla's idea of using the stuff that archives have already put together as descriptors and trying to put it into one place, whether or not it's downloading stuff from Archives Grid and putting it up, or just linking to Archives Grid, like this is pretty close to, you know, what it is that's going to work. So I think, yeah, anyway, I think that there's a lot of different ways to, I guess I don't think we need to decide on the various different categorizations, because those already are inherent in every single archival institution. Like, you know, this is, you know, whether or not it's from an organizational description, like archives and special collections, we do underdocumented communities, focusing on these communities, like very brief 2-sentence explanation. But then also, you know, we have the papers of EBA, and they, you know, created Via Victoria, and, you know, all of that is already created. Like that's already described. So I think it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to capture all of this, bring it down to the nub of the ridiculous amount of description that we already do, in order to create something that's really usable. I mean, because frankly, like in my experience, most Bostonians don't even know what an archive is. And so, you know, we have to get over that. And so if we're creating something that's only available or only understood by, you know, your average PhD, then that may not necessarily what we need, when we just need like something distilling that information down into, if you're interested, like you were saying before, if you're interested in looking at the South End and Latinx people, you know, here are the places you want to look. So I don't have, that's not a solution. It's just sort of like providing a little bit of context, but also reiterating that the descriptions are already there. I think the secret sauce is to distill them down into something that is easily recognizable by general people.
I completely agree. And I think that was one of the things that I got really worried about when we were looking at the Airtable for the Chinatown history project. It was just like, if I was like 3 months into research on this topic, I would really feel at home. But if I was like, I want to do Chinatown, I would run screaming from that document. But I feel like we could create essentially, because I think in metaphors, the front desk at a high rise, where somebody walks up and just says, I want to know more about, and says a word, and then we say, go to floor 12. That's kind of what I see this page being. We just got to figure out how to create that list of, topics really. So what do you all recommend that process looking like? Because the list that we have from the CSV from Kayla, I think Hennessy says 500 topics long. Too long. And I don't even want to guess at what the right number is, but what do you all think is next? Is it coming up with a list of topics, like the things that we're going to be having, what we expect somebody coming to this page having this word or two words in their head, and we will direct them, and then work on the directions next after that, but come together with the list of the topics? Is that the appropriate next step?
And I don't mind going through what Kayla sent me and start grouping, right? So that then I can understand. Sorry, Kayla, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, part of our task is to come up with this timeline, right? So does it make sense to start with those timeline events and come up with topics from that? Which obviously isn't exclusive. We can always, it can be a living document that we're always adding topics to, but just as a starting point, it maybe to at least create, whether it's a spreadsheet or an Airtable, so that people can visualize what we're talking about. Start with that. And I'm happy, Joe, we are right next door neighbor, so I'm happy to come over and maybe like you create a spreadsheet and I create an Airtable or something so that we can just compare for the next meeting.
Sure.
But I think maybe starting with the timeline, which is part of our commission task anyways, might be helpful to guide us.
The only issue I have with that is part of the reason why we're making the structure in this meeting and making sure that we can kind of move forward is that we want to start populating the timeline page in a way that's visible so that we can use it as a tool to get the flagging of missing components, because we know that the whatever it is, 11 of us getting together on this project would inevitably leave big gaps. We need to at least start with something that we can then show the public and then have the public provide us with feedback on. And I think we're at the stage now where it seems like there's at least enough consensus in this group to start populating these pages, at least up to the timeline part. The other worries I have with like going from timeline to topic is the inherent lack of that kind of information that we would have on the topics. I don't think that it's going to cover a lot of ground. I may be completely wrong, but I would love to go for a little bit more thorough breadth at this point on topics personally.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm signing us up for a lot of work.
Yeah, but I viewed it more as a 400 thing than a 250 thing, because
Sure.
it's like the archive, if it's Boston Archives, then it has the capacity to be for the 400th and much more about the city itself and not necessarily the 250th of
Yeah.
America.
If we ended up with a list of all of the archives that have open hours,
Mhm.
that have something to do with the history of Boston, that is a monumental task.
Okay.
I mean, because there isn't one. There are many lists, but none of them is comprehensive. And what I'm talking about is in the city of Boston. And so, I mean, as goal number one, that might be a good, reasonable goal for us to. And all, and I mean, archivists are very happy to be asked.
Mhm.
So, so we could even, I mean, Dory and I could send or any one of us could send an email out to the New England Archivist group and say, fill out this Google form about your archive. And then when people don't respond to that, we'll be like, hey, Boston Symphony Orchestra Archives, fill out this form, or we'll fill it out for you, right? Like that, especially if it's very, very basic. Here's your website, here's your name, 2 to 3 sentence description about what it is that you do.
Yeah.
And then, and that could be made into tags or not. I also think so. I mean, that's like a strategic, easy or easy-ish, monumental, but doable task that we could do ourselves pretty easily, I think, using the resources available to us. Dory also is very involved in this sort of very, very ad hoc Boston Archivist meetup, which includes like a whole bunch of the Boston archivists that are available, people that work at Boston-based institutions. And then, so I think that that's something like if we create that as like goal number one for the archives section, I think it's doable.
Yeah.
I still do think about this sort of Kayla's tags idea of things and think that there should be a way of us creating a whole big database that we don't necessarily want to put on the website, but it might be helpful for us. I always have this like idea of like an archives version of the BPL info line where somebody could call up and be like, I want to know about my grandmother, blah, blah, blah. And, and then you just sort of like have the directory tree of that, kind of like what you're describing as Joe about the concierge, go to the 17th floor idea. And, we're not going to get that from this commission, but working towards something like that might not necessarily be a waste of our time.
That sounds all great, and I really love the idea of just the list of archives is like a really low-hanging fruit. That page could have that, and then if we get to the when we get to the more database version of things, then that can be an addition. But the page that's currently up there is a live Google Doc for our subcommittee that folks did add quite a bit to, because I definitely did not write this list myself. And we're up to 60 archives, which is like definitely not all of them. So it would be incredibly helpful if you all could reach out via your kind of networks to see if we can get more people into that, and then send that information back to us. In the meantime, I think Kayla, maybe you and I can sit down in the archives building and just kind of poke at this a little bit more with a spreadsheet in front of us, because it's a lot harder to do that on Zoom, and see what we can kind of get out at the other end. And Hennessy, if you can work on like the topic winnowing, that would be really helpful too. And then once we kind of have those three components kind of moving a little bit further along, it may make a little bit more sense as to what is doable on this. But I really think this would be great if one of our products is a web page that not just folks in the Commemoration Commission, but like the public are getting sent this link to say, this is a really helpful resource if you're starting a research topic, to at least know where to go. Because like I didn't know that archives had really specific kind of collecting themes, and until embarrassingly recent, like grad school. So it's really helpful to know. The general public, I don't think, knows that generally either, and it'd be really helpful to tell people like archives have themes and topics that they collect and seek and share with each other. And here's kind of a group of them, but yeah, I think that would be really great. And I don't think it's every single box list inventory that we have from all of our institutions, which is what we don't need to do. Okay.
No, because even creating it is one thing and then maintaining it is another thing. And that's just like a non-starter.
Yeah. I feel like whatever we can make the smallest and most helpful combination of these things is what we should do, because we really will be pretty public facing, and anything beyond an intro level is going to go either unused or unappreciated. So I think we want to keep it very top level and as helpful as possible. Cool.
I just had a quick question thinking about Giordana's great idea about a Google form, and now thinking as a city archivist, should the form be created from a City of Boston email address so that the records are in the city archives eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I could create it, and then, we just have it there.
So maybe we should have like a draft of the questions we want to be being
Sure.
sent out.
Yeah, I'm happy to, I mean, Dory could send it. I mean, not to put you on the spot, Dory, but she's runs community history at the BPL, and so if that's sent from a BPL address, then that might be.
The only thing is BPL is separate from the city. So it would have to come from a boston.gov if
Okay.
it wants to be in our servers.
Okay. Yes. So then, have you signed up for the NEA listserv? Because that's the only. Okay. Then yeah, go ahead. Happy to do that.
If it would be helpful, Kayla, I can send you, for the Chinatown history directory, we'd come up with we'd created our own survey that we sent out to repositories and to members of the public. So if you want some prefab questions that you could pull from, I'll send that over to you. I have a question about next steps, if that's okay. I'm thinking about the spreadsheet that we have, and Joe, that you used in your demo of the website. Does it make sense for us to independently do some editing of this spreadsheet, or does it make sense for there to be a working session at our next subcommittee meeting, or do we filter edits through a person? I feel like, Hennessy, you have plenty already on your plate, so I wouldn't want to add to said plate. So what do we want to do? How do we want to move this forward in terms of?
I mean, I would say I already have a Google form template that's a commemoration commission, and it's like, we can send it under the auspices of, but that's easy to share with you guys, the template. I don't know how we want to delegate that responsibility, but I can, anything that we want to send out, I can send out through my emails, and that way we have the database, like we have it in the database, like Kayla said, but I don't know.
I think if Kayla, if you can get the survey form out, by the next time we meet, I think it would be good to have on the agenda, set aside some time to go over this list as a group, because I think expecting people to do this on their own time is really just a lot when we're doing 1,000 things. So let's set aside a chunk of time for kind of editing and vetting that list. We'll have it pulled up and we'll go over everything. There'll hopefully be new additions based on what we find out from the survey. And then in addition to that, at the next meeting, I'd like to have, if the topic idea survives until the next meeting, I'd like to have a review of some preliminary topics. Does that sound good? Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's an effective use of time too, because I think we're going to have a little bit otherwise less to review. This was a lot of new stuff that we're looking at on the page, and we can also greatly improve this between now and then too. We just wanted to make sure we weren't like running down the wrong rabbit hole with the website design, but it seems like we're at least in a place that we can continue working from that.
Yeah. So I wanted to add really quick. Know that I think Joan sent a question, about do we think we'll get any pushback about remaining a commission rather than an advisory committee? I think maybe just inherently, because we receive feedback about things like that. But I think that we have a very good argument as to why we should switch to an advisory committee, and if we get enough support, I think that it would still be okay, even if we get pushback. Another thing I wanted to mention, because we had to reschedule this meeting because it fell on the 4th of July. The next meeting is August 1st, which is in a week. Not sure that you guys want to meet in a week. And I hate having to keep rescheduling your like fixed meetings. So I wanted to know if you guys wanted to reschedule, if you wanted to meet, if you wanted to cancel. Yeah.
I actually really like the idea of having a working meeting.
Okay.
Where we hash out what are the questions we're going to ask of the archivist, what are the tags. I mean, if we can get enough people to attend that, I think
I think that's a great idea.
Momentum.
Yeah, if we get the survey out, Kayla, do you think you can send it out this week?
Well, I was just wanted to clarify based on what Giordana just said, should I create a draft of the survey? Because we don't really know what we want to ask the archivists yet. So I didn't think we'd be sending it out to people yet, just creating a draft of what the survey would actually ask. But I can have that before Thursday next week.
I can send you.
Working committee is, sorry, Hesse.
Sorry, no, I was saying I could send her the commemoration commission template and she can do the form on that, and then it'll be perfect if it's draft form and by the next meeting because it's in a week. If we want to do that.
Sounds great. So the working thing will be reviewing the survey. We'll be reviewing tags and we'll be editing the list of archives that we already have, potentially adding some more as we remember them. And then that will be updated again with new information from the survey. Sound good? Okay, cool. And I know we're after time, so I want to wrap this up as quickly as possible too. Yeah. We went our full time this time.
Yes. All right, so what I'll do is I will send out the calendar invite. I mean, I think you guys already have it populated, but I'll send out another doodle if needed. I'll send out the meeting minutes from last week, meeting minutes from this week, the agenda, and hopefully I can send that all out by Thursday. And I will send Kayla the form.
And when's the full commission meeting?
It's in 2 days. It's on the 25th.
Oh yeah, okay. I didn't think I had it on my calendar. I do. Cool. Good. All right.
So
Well, we even have agenda for the next one too, so that saves a step too.
yeah, no, it's perfect. So yeah, if you want to, thanks, David. Can I make a motion to adjourn? We do that, and then I'll let you guys go.
Motion.
Amazing.
Second,
Amazing. Have a great day, everyone.
thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for all
everyone.
your work, Hennessy. Thank you. We appreciate you and we understand how hard it's been. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you for working with me, guys.
And thanks, Joe and everybody else. Bye.
Bye.